welcome to Living Ardently. I'm your host, Adrian Giraldi, and we are back with another episode. This week we have our first guest in a while, and I'm really excited to have her. She's started this really great mission that is beautiful, and I can't wait to talk about it. So let's get into it. So today's guest is a recent grad from Temple University. She's getting married later this year in August. And she's also the founder of the Human Condition community, also known as the Human Condition. Please welcome my friend, Kristen Deasy.
What's up, guys? Thank you, Adrian, so much for having me.
But thanks for coming. I'm really excited to have you.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I was telling you earlier at the beginning that as we were prepping the show, like it's something that you guys started. When did you guys start the Human Condition?
It's been almost a year. It was last April.
During
we officially
COVID.
launched during COVID, Divine Mercy Sunday, which was April 19th. So
That's
coming
awesome.
up on 1 year.
Yeah, I remember it. I remember seeing it grow so fast, and it was like, oh, this is awesome. And then I think I did an episode with Chanel, and she's the one who kind of like reacquainted me with it. I was like, oh, awesome. Yeah, I remember like seeing this in the beginning, and da-da-da-da. My fiance loves your account and follows it all the time. So I was like, oh, I definitely have to get them on there because I did want to do more episodes when it comes to like mental health and stuff because it's so important. But before we get into Human Condition, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and your little faith background?
Yeah, totally. So I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and grew up in a Catholic home, and really a culturally Catholic home, a moral home where my parents had really awesome values and raised us to be really just virtuous and they kept us in line. We weren't bad kids for the most part. Mass was a priority on Sundays. Other than going to Catholic school and going to Mass on Sundays, faith wasn't a huge, talking point in the house. We didn't pray together a ton. Conversations about faith or religion weren't huge. So in my mind, it was just kind of like, oh, faith is this thing for Sundays, or faith is this thing for my religion teachers in school to talk about. But it kind of was very boxed into like the school or the church and certain days of the week. So it wasn't lived out. It wasn't a part of my identity in a personal sense. And so kind of with that mindset, I viewed faith really as just a bunch of rules to follow and this thing that was pretty restrictive and gave me no freedom. And so that developed a big kind of resistance in me through middle school and early high school. And so, really, really towards high school, I went to an all-girls Catholic school, and I would like skip mornings when we had Mass in the morning. I would sleep in late or go to Panera and not go to Mass, and just like really avoided Mass when it was involved with school, and just didn't want to have any part with kind of the faith at that time. And really was like snarky with my religion teachers and thought I was so smart and like could school them on all these like topics of morality that they were trying to tell me, and I knew nothing. So really just had this kind of snarky attitude and just tension with the church at the time. Yeah. And kind of by my junior year, just a few like small events. It wasn't like this huge conversion moment that a lot of people experience, but it really was just a slow kind of flicker of a light turning on. Eventually kind of made my way back to the faith and really learned for the first time what the faith was and what it meant to live it out as a lifestyle, as like my core value and as my identity. And that was really transformative for me because it just made it more personal. It made Jesus more personal. It made the church more personal for me. Yeah. And it was a really interesting kind of conversion because a lot of it kind of flowed a lot with some mental health struggles that I was dealing with at the time. And so it was interesting to kind of be going through this really intense recovery period through struggling with these mental health issues, and also wrestling with these questions of the faith, and being a high school student and figuring out what that meant. And it's not cool to like want to be religious, and it also is not cool to talk about mental health. And so I was just like doing all of these uncool things, and all of these things that were really hush hush and nobody wanted me to talk about. And so it was a little bit isolating. And it really wasn't until I went to college that I was able to truly live out of that identity of faith, and find a community to kind of rally around me, and do that in a more kind of sustainable way. It wasn't just me white knuckling. It was, really, you need community. And that was where I finally found it. So yeah, that was a little bit of my upbringing. It was, conversion's beautiful, and it was a interesting process to get there, but I wouldn't go back and change it, because it definitely helped me grow a lot.
Did you have focus missionaries in your campus, or was it like
I did, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
They were great. And I mean, I think it was through the Focus Missionaries and through the Newman Center on campus. That's where I learned really how to cultivate a prayer life, and what it means to pray daily, and the importance of it, and the necessity of why we need daily prayer, and really just how my relationship with the Lord kind of grew and deepened through that practice. So I owe a lot of my growth to those Focus Missionaries.
Yeah, that's awesome. I always try to tell, when I was a youth minister, I try to encourage like anybody I knew who was going to college, not just the teens I worked with, to get involved at their campus ministry, the Catholic campus ministry. Yeah. Because it's just so, I mean, that's where a lot of people lose their faith, like.
Oh yeah, totally.
Especially teens, like who are quote unquote forced to go to church as a teen, and then they have to take that responsibility as an adult in college, and they don't follow it.
Yeah. No, I'm grateful. I as soon as I got to campus, I beelined it for the Catholic community, because I just knew if I didn't have the community, like I would be the same delinquent that I was in high school, just getting into the wrong crowds and not doing the right things, and just really getting immersed in, the secular party culture, where I was like, I can't make friends with anybody else until I make friends with the Catholics, because I will just go off the deep end. And I knew myself well enough by that point that I knew who I needed to surround myself with, to kind of, keep me in check. So I'm super grateful for that.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, it's just so necessary. And I had the privilege to be involved with my focus group at my college too, but I didn't find my main community there. I luckily found it through other places on campus. I'm granted I did go to a Catholic university, so it was just like surrounded by like Catholics all around me. So but I had great friends, and I made great friends and lifelong friends, and half of those guys that I made friends with are in my wedding party, and half of their wives are like people I was friends with too. I'm
marrying my Focus missionary, so I don't know. I don't know about you, but it worked out pretty well. They do their job well.
That's amazing. Yeah. I didn't know that San Antonio was actually your Focus missionary.
Yeah. He was, I guess he was a third-year missionary my freshman year.
Oh, wow.
And he was kind of thinking that he was going to be done. And he did end up leaving after that year. But yeah, we became best buds, and then started dating, and here we are getting married.
That's amazing. It's so great.
Yeah. It's awesome.
That's so cool. So then, so you guys are getting married, right? In August. Just shifts one thing you're really excited about.
About marriage?
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking about this the other day, and it sounds silly, but we're big movie people. Well, I guess maybe I am. He is too. So we will watch movies a lot. I'm asleep in 5 minutes. And sometimes he is too, okay? Yeah. Sometimes he stays up the whole time, but usually I'm asleep in 5 minutes. I'm excited to just watch a movie together and be able to fall asleep and then not have to wake up, say goodbye. One of us has to leave. One of us is driving home. So I'm just excited to just be able to fall asleep on the couch and not have to get up. That's one of my, I'm really looking forward to, of just oh yeah, it's just the saying goodbye, when you're hanging out. I'm just over it, ready for that to be done. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
I feel that. I live an hour and a half from my fiance, and it's
wow.
Anytime. I mean, so we find the compromise. Her parents have an extra, she lives with her parents, so they have an extra room, a couple of extra rooms that I can stay in.
Yeah.
If I visit for a weekend. Here. An hour and a half is not that far. It's not that far, but it's just at the end of the day, a long weekend.
Oh yeah.
You don't
that's
have to
long.
do that. So.
Totally, I feel that.
Yeah, so I feel that, and I'm excited too. I just talk. I mean, obviously, love talking about wedding prep because it's just we're getting close.
Yeah.
We're getting married in
I know.
40 some days and getting excited, but there's also growing white hairs. You can see one right there, a couple right there, just from all the wedding prep that has to happen.
Yep, they're coming in.
Yeah. Amazing. So
the stress be real.
Yeah. So you just go moving on to your the thing that you founded, the account that you founded back in April, as we said earlier. The human condition on Instagram. You can follow it at the human condition community, right? So tell us about it. Why did you start it? Start there. Why did you start the Instagram account?
Yeah. So just a little backstory. I kind of touched upon this with just my faith background. So in high school, was really kind of wrestling with some mental health struggles and really probably was all of grade school and middle school. Yeah. But I think I was always written off as just a sensitive child. I think a lot of parents are just unequipped and aren't there's just been such a lack of mental health education where, we look at a sensitive child and just say they're a sensitive child when, there could be some deeper things there. Right. And so I was definitely anxious, definitely, I think had some bouts of depression growing up and through middle school. And then kind of through high school, they became a lot more apparent, I would say. And was just, really not myself. My parents could really tell by this point, okay, our daughter, her mood is really off more than a teenage girl should be off, I think. Yeah. And so that they had really encouraged me to start going to therapy, and I was super resistant. I had a lot of just kind of preconceived stereotypes and stigmas about mental health. Right. And I just remember breaking down when they were like, you need to go to therapy. And I was like, I'm not going to a shrink. I'm not crazy. And just went off on them, just feeling so ashamed that they thought I was this type of person that needed to go to therapy just because I had such a negative association with people going to therapy, which was just so false and stereotyped. So, had started going to therapy, I think in my sophomore year. And I totally blew it off. Didn't talk about anything relevant and just wasted my time with this therapist because I just didn't want to be there. I was just super ashamed, super embarrassed. And I did not want to admit that I had any problems. I think I come from an Irish family, having these issues is a weakness, a perceived weakness, and I wanted to appear strong and appear like I didn't need outside help for any of these issues. And so really just suppressing everything that I was really feeling. And you can only do that for so long. And I really was just pretending in front of everyone because I didn't want other people to see how awful I was feeling on the inside. And so by my junior year, things had really escalated. I was having a lot more panic attacks, was taken to the hospital for a panic attack, still did not want to admit to myself that these issues were going on. And then the summer before my junior year, I had attempted suicide. And so after that attempt, that was kind of when it hit me. I was like, wow, this is pretty real, and I feel pretty crappy, and really to the point where I don't want to be here anymore. And so I was actually the one who I said, Mom and Dad, I need to be admitted to the hospital. I can't keep myself safe. You guys can't keep you can't keep me safe because you're just not like that burden can't be on parents to keep,
Right.
you know, a child safe when they're in that deep of a crisis kind of situation. And so I finally like advocated for myself. I just said, I want to be around
Did you
professionals
say
where I
is
can,
this sophomore year, you said? Still?
this was going into my junior year.
So going
Yeah.
to-
So I
okay.
think I was 16, I guess is how old you are.
Yeah.
Where, yeah, I just finally felt like, okay, I want to be around professionals where I can kind of explain what I'm experiencing and them understand it, because, yeah, my parents didn't have the language or, you know, the understanding of, you know, how do you understand what your daughter's going through when this is happening? So I was admitted for 2 weeks, and during that time, junior year had started, so I missed school, and then I missed another 2 whole months. So I didn't go back to school until November, because after I was discharged, I went into a discharge program where it was basically therapy every day from like school hours, so like 9 to 2, 9 to 3, and it wasn't inpatient, so it was outpatient. I would just go every day, and this 2-month period of recovery and treatment was, I mean, hands down, the best thing I could have ever done for myself.
Wow.
I was such a perfectionist in high school and went to a really competitive high school where academics were just like end all be all. So having to miss the first 2 months of junior year, which is like, you know, the most important year before college, I was just like, my life is over. I'm not going to college. Like, I'm going to be so behind. What about AP classes? You know, the whole sob. But I mean, it was so transformative because it was the first time that I had tangibly seen the benefits of putting my mental health first. Of actually your grades don't define you, and how well you do in school don't define you, because you could be suffering so much internally and have the best grades and get into all the schools and feel like you want to die. And to me, that's not worth it. Like, I'd rather get help. So, I mean, that was just such a beautiful time for me to kind of die to those identities that I had placed on myself of like, if you don't have straight A's, if you don't have this GPA, like, you're worthless, where it's actually like, wow, I like how I feel when my brain is functioning well. And I like how I feel learning these skills that I can help manage depression and anxiety. So yeah, just so much growth in those 2 months. So then when I returned to school, I still was, very at odds with the church and with the faith, and just didn't want a whole lot to do with it. But I mean, coming from someone who's been pretty close to dying, I actually had 2 attempts. I had attempted another time within those 2 months. But yeah, having that experience and really hitting that point of lowness, you start to wrestle with questions of life and death, you know, like you've experienced it this closely. And so I was just kind of thinking about all these questions of like, why am I suffering? And, you know, what would have happened if I died? And what is life about? Like, what's the purpose of life? If I'm going to stay here, like, what is the purpose of it? And so I was starting to wrestle with all of these questions. And once I got back to school, I had gone, there was a class retreat that we went on, and I decided to go to confession for the first time in about 5 years.
Wow.
And I don't know why I wanted to go to confession. I thought confession was such a hoax. I'm like, well, why do I need to tell this old priest all the things I'm doing? He doesn't need to know that. Like, he's not going to forgive me. You know, like, I can talk to God if I want forgiveness. So I just thought it was super dumb.
Yeah.
But I end up in the confessional, and I mean, I'm just like weeping. I don't even know why, but I mean, it was just so, the Holy Spirit was definitely there, because I was quite a mess. And I don't even remember telling him my sins, but I just kind of remember walking him through kind of the past few months of everything that had happened. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but he did say something along the lines of, you know, like, it's not your fault. Jesus doesn't blame you. And like, he was with you, and he's still with you, and he's proud of you. And I don't know what it was, but it was something of like, it's not your fault, because I just had put so much blame on, kind of the pain that I had felt that I had inflicted upon my family of, I mean, what they had gone through with a daughter who had attempted suicide. Like, that's traumatic and really scary and painful. So I had just put a lot of guilt on myself for being the cause of all that, and just really feeling like a burden. And for when the priest said, you know, like, it's not your fault, I just felt like such a relief. And then when he said, like, Jesus is proud of you, I had never felt proud for the work that I was doing in therapy. And I was like, wow, I'm proud of myself. Like, I wouldn't be here and be, living a healthier life and feeling happy if it wasn't for the work that I had put in therapy. And so that kind of started a little bit of my conversion of just the peace and freedom that I had felt after that confession. I was like, I want more of that. And was finding it through different opportunities that the church was giving, and that just opportunities that were presenting themselves to me. But then I kind of was reconciling with not feeling welcome in the church for these mental health struggles that I was dealing with. And kind of anytime I would bring it up in church settings or just at my school, which was a Catholic school, it was very hush-hush of like, don't tell people you struggle with that. And just kind of making myself feel less than, of like, oh, like you don't really have a place here because, of this issue, which is just so bizarre to me. But I'm starting to feel that of like, oh, can I do this church thing? Can I be this Catholic girl and have these issues? Like, does that mean I'm doing something wrong? Is something wrong with me? Like, does God, is he punishing me for something? Am I just not holy enough? Can I ever be holy? And really, just being confronted with all of these questions. And then finding out like, oh, it's actually through therapy, and it can be through our healing journeys that the Lord desires to make us saints, and that he desires our holiness through that. And it's where we become the best versions of ourselves. Like, a lot of us through therapy and through healing become better individuals. Like, that's the goal, like we want to be healthier. We want to be rooting out these wounds that are deep seated in our lives that we might be acting out of currently. And I was really, doing the work of like recognizing these wounds and not acting out of them anymore. And in turn, allowing myself to be able to enter into prayer more freely and to be able to enter into relationship more freely with those around me. So it was quite the opposite that I was finding, that, oh, wow, God actually helps us to become who he's created us to be through therapy and through healing. And we're only going to get there if we treat mental illness and mental health as a real thing. And just kind of recognizing, like, the Lord has created us, mind, body, and soul, and we are doing a disservice to him by completely ignoring the mind and by just saying, just pray it away, like pray through it. I'm like, do we say that about a physical ailment or of a spiritual ailment? Like, no, we go to confession because we can't just pray away the garbage of our soul. Or we go to a physical doctor because we can't just pray away a physical ailment. I mean, if the Lord wants to, he can, and he will. He has that ability to do anything through prayer. But he also gives us doctors and science and therapists for a real reason, and actually will speak through those people. And so just kind of all of these questions and all of these findings were really hitting me as a 17-year-old. And I was like, whoa, more people need to understand this, because the church is missing out on saints by rejecting people with mental illness. People have stopped coming to Mass, have stopped filling the pews, have stopped filling the churches because they don't feel welcome. And I mean, if we are the place where saints are made, like, sorry, we're missing a lot of people because we're telling people they're not welcome, or they can't be holy enough, or they won't achieve holiness because of these issues. And so kind of from that point, I was like, I need to start a nonprofit. And at 17, I didn't even know what a nonprofit was. I just knew it was like a good organization that does good. And so I was like, that's what I want to do. So it was just always on my heart, and I didn't know what that would look like. I wanted to go to school for fashion. And I was like, maybe it can be like a mental health fashion organization. Cause I was just trying to figure out a way to like combine all of these like passions of mine. I was like, we'll have cool t-shirts with cool mental health slogans. I'm like, okay. So, in college, honestly, by my junior year of college, was just taking this to prayer a lot more. And it was the first time that real ideas were coming through prayer. Real tangible ideas for what this organization would look like. The name, The Human Condition, kind of came to me, and it was recurring through so many different aspects, like different talks, and it was in my Magnificat a few times of just like, the human experience, the human condition is to suffer. And who are we to say that suffering of the mind isn't real suffering? Like we just completely write off the suffering of the mind, but it's part of the human condition. Like the saints weren't exempt from it. Jesus wasn't exempt from it. And that's where, redemptive suffering, that's where true, glory is found, is through our sufferings. Like Jesus showed us by entering into our human condition that suffering is worth something, because he endured it. He endured both physical and mental suffering. And so, I just really started kind of fleshing out what this organization would look like through prayer and just through, the inspirations of the Holy Spirit. And so then the world stops. And I'm in quarantine, and it just, I don't know, I'd kind of put it on the back burner and thought it was something that I would get to in my 30s. And, I thought I was going to work for a nonprofit for a while to just get some experience and then think about it later. But it was just burning in my heart during quarantine. And it was all I could think about. It was all I could focus on. And so I was just like, we're doing it. We're applying, for 501c3 status. We're getting a website, and we're going full force at 21. Screw the 31 idea. We'll do it now. So I launched it last April on Divine Mercy Sunday. Because, what is healing without mercy? And, what an incredible feast day to kind of protect this organization and lead this organization. So that was kind of, the fruits of just a lot of reckoning with these questions at 17 and finding a place of where can these topics of faith and mental health be integrated, because they deserve to be integrated, if we want to help people become saints and become, who they were meant to be. So that's kind of the child of the human condition of how that started.
That's so awesome. What a great story of how it started. And it's obviously something that is, God has been working in your heart for years, and praise God that it actually came to fruition, and it looks like it's already doing great things. So, what else are you, give those who don't know anything at all about it, just the idea of what you hope to do with the human condition.
So we're a nonprofit, basically striving to cultivate hope, healing, and conversation. Those are kind of what we identified as our 3 pillars, and we hope to achieve that through the integration of faith and mental health. So overall, the human condition desires really to change the narrative that mental health and faith are mutually exclusive. For so long, it's kind of been like, all right, the topic of faith is over here and mental health's over here, and they don't interact, they're very separate, but they're not. The Lord owns everything of us, including our mind. So that includes everything that we will endure through our mind. So really just trying to integrate those 2 topics. And we really hope to inspire people living with mental illness, along with those not living with mental illness. I think this is a topic for everyone to care about, but specifically those who have felt particularly rejected or hurt by the church because of their mental illness, to really inspire them that God has a plan for them, which is to be great saints in the midst of their suffering. So kind of to break that down in more tangible ways of what that looks like, the pillar of hope, I think, is so necessary, because there's kind of 2 ideas of hope in our culture, of secular hope, which is really just optimism or a positive attitude. Right. But I think through promoting true Christian hope, people are able to embrace their suffering, own it, and know that the resurrection is on the other side. Where just secular hope dismisses suffering and says, oh, just kind of ignore it, have a better attitude and it'll go away. But the reality of our human condition is that suffering is guaranteed. And so true hope is, living in that suffering and grappling with it, but knowing that hope is real, and that joy in Christ is real, and that there's no resurrection without Good Friday. So you really just have to kind of embrace that with a hope, a Christian hope, really. Right. And then kind of the second pillar of healing is, again, reconciling with our reality that we're broken. Like we wouldn't be Catholic, we wouldn't need Jesus if we weren't broken. Yet I think a lot of times Catholics live as if they don't need saved. And I'm like, then why are you Catholic? Like, what's the point of this? Like, if you don't need saved, why are you here? So like, let's stop ignoring our brokenness, because it's through healing, whether it's, through the healing of a diagnosed mental illness or not, where we're able to kind of fine tune our rough edges and fine tune our blind spots and wounds we might be living out of, to be able to become a saint. And by just disregarding that, it completely misses the opportunity to experience the healing of God, and the healing that he wants us to experience. Oftentimes through a mental health professional. Like, of course we pray regardless, but I mean, he's given us these professionals that he wants to extend his healing through. And there's just such freedom found in that. So promoting that idea of healing. And again, that's just, promoting therapy, promoting seeking out professional help, to just reduce that stigma. And then lastly, conversation. So how are hope and healing accomplished? Through conversation. So through talking about these things on the pulpit, in classrooms, on social media, at dinner tables, really just bringing to light these conversations, because therapy and the work of healing won't be normalized until we're talking about it, until it's promoted, and until we're okay with getting vulnerable. I've found that a huge piece of conversation is being vulnerable. Like, I have to share my experiences and pain with others to let them know it's okay for them to do the same. I was really inspired by just reading stories of people struggling with mental health issues when I was in high school, that it gave me the courage to kind of speak up about what I was experiencing. Because if no one's being real, no one's being vulnerable, like, no real healing will occur, So I have to be vulnerable to give people permission to also be vulnerable, to share their stories, to sit with their story and find out what their story is. So I just think that's such a pivotal piece in kind of the organization. So that's kind of how those three break down a little bit.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I just want to echo the whole vulnerability thing. And if we have most people who listen will understand that, vulnerability is such a big part of just Living Ardently's mission, right? Because it's just, I'm a firm believer in what C.S. Lewis wrote in The Four Loves. Are you familiar with it? What do you think?
I've skimmed it. I haven't read the whole thing. So The Four Loves, I've said this before, and I'm sorry for those of you who already know it, but it's just so important to hear. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull up the full quote, but the short quote is, to love at all is to be vulnerable. Oh, okay, yeah. So true.
So let me pull up the full quote, because it's just so good and it's so true, and it echoes everything that you just said about being vulnerable and why it's necessary, especially just in proper growth and healing, So let me get that.
Yeah.
This is probably like the 45th time of me reading this quote.
Dig it in.
Probably maybe 10, but still.
Love it.
So he says, in his book, The Four Loves, he says, to love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything in your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it up carefully around your hobbies and little luxuries, and avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in a casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, and irredeemable. To love at all is to be vulnerable. So if you want to let your heart, being vulnerable, coincides with your heart being broken, and sharing that brokenness with one another.
Yeah, totally.
And that's.
But I think it also, it reveals the beauty, because, sharing about my suicide isn't fun, or my suicide attempt, excuse me. It's not fun, and yeah, there's always a part of me where it's just hard to relive that. And I think there's a part of me that still kind of mourns with 17-year-old and 16-year-old Kristen who felt that low. And it's kind of, that's reopened every time I share. But it also, you know, reliving that brokenness and reliving that pain, it reveals the beauty of, you know, what's the other side look like. And, you know, I put in the work. I put in the work of therapy, and that was painful. Like, that was loving myself to the point of where it was painful to really reckon with these uncomfortable feelings and, you know, these feelings of loneliness and hopelessness. So yeah, just really getting in there and into the brokenness, it reveals the beauty. And that does require pain, and it requires vulnerability. So yeah, I love that quote.
That's awesome. Yeah, it really does. And it encompasses everything that we need as, I think, just as people to help people convert, you know?
Yeah.
Whatever the case may be, if it's helping them understand mental illness, or if it's helping them understand that God is real, you know, like being vulnerable about your experiences is what person-to-person connection. I mean, that's what we are like made for, you know. We're made for community. That's why I love the fact that community part is at least in the official name of the human condition community, because that's like one of the most key parts is for conversion is community. So I love it. One more question before we go to break. What is a hope that you hope to? What is a goal you hope to aspire to for the next 5 years with the human condition?
So many things. I would say, really, the biggest one is we're really working towards developing a program or a scholarship program where we can sponsor an individual or multiple individuals therapy for a year, because I know that is a huge roadblock to people seeking out professional help who do need it, is the cost. And I don't want that to be a roadblock for people to experience that healing and that freedom that is available through therapy. So that is definitely a huge one we're working towards, which we're very excited about, because that's ultimately what I want to promote, is that therapy is good, and therapy doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. So to be able to kind of rally around an individual and say, we believe in you, and like, we want to provide you the means to seek healing in your own life, would just be, such a gift to do that. So keep that in your prayers.
For sure. Is there any way that the listeners who want to help contribute to that, for them to do that, to help contribute?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, which is thehumanconditioncommunity.org. You can donate there. That website's also found in the bio of our Instagram, the Human Condition Community. So you can donate. You can sign up for a recurring donation or a one-time donation. And just continue to share our organization, trying to get our name out there to parishes and just different kind of like church communities, church groups, to just kind of build a presence there for people, especially I think people who are involved with youth, I say loosely, like more so 18 and up, like young adults, people who I think need healing the most. Not that we're going to turn anyone away, but people who I think need to hear the truth of healing and maybe need to be encouraged with the message that we're trying to promote. So Absolutely. Donate online, spread the word, and pray for us.
We'll put all the information and donate links in the description of the show notes. So if you guys want to do that, just easy click away. Just go listen to it.
Great. Perfect.
But we'll be back with more about mental health and the human condition after this break. If you did not know, Living Ardently is now an affiliate with Be a Heart Design. Be Art has a bunch of great things for you and your family, so if you want to go get something, use our affiliate link in our show notes, and then you can use our promo code Ardently10 for 10% off your purchase. Everything that we make goes straight back into our podcast, so you'll be supporting our ministry. Again, so if you want to get something nice for yourself, for your friends, or your family, go to Be a Heart using our affiliate link, use our promo code Ardently10 for 10% off, and not only will you be helping the ministry here at Living Ardently, but you'll be getting something cool too. Again, link in the show notes, Ardently10. Let's get back to it. We are back with Kristen Deasy, who is the founder of the Human Condition Community. You can follow them at the Human Condition Community on Instagram, and then you can go to the website, which is, again, thehumanconditioncommunity.org, to check out all the stuff that they're doing and to donate if you'd like to for their, because they're a 501c, or is it, how's that?
On the way to being a 501c3, but you can still donate.
On the way, so it's almost there.
On the way, we're getting there.
Yeah. But yeah, you can donate for their awesome ministry, and it's going to be so great. So yeah. All right. So we're talking a lot, obviously, the human condition is deeply rooted in the idea of faith in healing and mental health. And we talked about earlier that it was very taboo, and especially within the church, mental health was, of talking about it, keeping it on the low. And I was like, why is this a thing? And I didn't realize that speaking about mental health was like that, or seen like that in some places in the church, until I saw this tweet by this one priest, young priest, who tweeted out saying something about, like, dear brother priest, like, please stop using quotation marks when using the word mental health in your sermons. It hurts, and it hurts and displaces us, people who are sitting in your pews, like the 60% or whatever percent he said, sit in your pews every weekend, and something that you said earlier that's like, you saw my reaction. For those who weren't listening, I might have not seen it, but you said the church is missing on many saints because of their standpoint of mental health and turning them away. And it's just like, like, heart ached, but was so true. It's so true. So what do you think is the most important part of breaking that mentality when it comes to our church?
Yeah, I think,
or just maybe even in general, right? Because I feel like even sometimes is a broader range,
it's
just
even
in the church.
Secularly, still so stigmatized and stereotyped. I mean, I think it's interesting because, the church is made up of broken people. It's led by broken people. And there's a ton of groups that, we know this, and I think we've seen this in a really apparent way in the past, year of just, there's a lot of marginalized groups who aren't welcomed and embraced in the fullest sense. And so beyond just mental illness, the church really is missing out on a lot of saints, and what a disservice, we're doing to people, and doing a disservice that, we're supposed to be this place of, hope and healing and joy and peace, all the fun things that I think we don't often provide to people who need it the most. We only provide it to people who are convenient to provide it to, which is just really unfortunate. But in terms of mental illness, I think it's important to listen to people. I think, so often we hear other people's struggles and hear their stories, but when it's, a story or struggle with mental illness, we want to silence them, but we need to receive them, and we need to listen to them, and we need to believe them, and take their pain and struggle seriously, and not minimize it, and not over spiritualize it, in a sense of, like, saying, just pray through it, just pray it away, of recognizing that these are real issues that people deal with. And I know a complaint that I always had when I was struggling really bad with depression. Oh man, people would say this all the time, and people very close to me would say this all the time, like, just be happy. Cured. Thank you. Good one. Thank you. That really solved all my problems. Or, like, just put a smile on your face. Like, wow. Awesome idea. Let me jot that down. Okay, noted. For next time I'm feeling miserable, smile on my face. That cures it. So we just say these, like, idiotic things where it's just so much more harmful to people. Like, that just made me feel like, oh, my struggles are not real, and I should just be sucking it up, and X, Y, and Z. Then we kind of start to blame ourselves. So I think, like, just hearing people out and listening to them, asking how they want to be supported, and doing your own work. Like, it's not just on these own people, you know? Do your own work, look into it, look into these issues, look into how psychology and the faith complement one another, you know? Like, look into it. It's there, you know? If the Lord has created, you know, science and psychology, I'm sure it complements what we believe because it's good, and it points us to the Creator, and understanding the mind more helps us understand who we are, why we were made, you know, our Creator. Like, it just helps us have a such more holistic vision and understanding of the human person. And the human's complex, like, we know that, so, like, let's look into it a little bit more. The information's out there. And there's so many saints, you know, that have struggled with mental illness, and that were honest in their struggles. And I found that so comforting. Just to see these people who are capital C canonized, was like, gave me permission to believe that could be me. Like, oh, I can be holy, and I have the capability to be a saint, like a canonized saint, in the midst of these sufferings and in the midst of these illnesses. Like, it's not a reflection of my character, where I think a lot of times we make mental illness a reflection of one's character or a reflection of one's prayer life, which, like, do we do that for any other physical ailment? No. Right. Like, we don't. So I don't know why we're doing it to the mind. How bad would that look too? Like, you know, yeah. So yeah, I think that, and just to give some names for some saints, if anyone's curious to look into, one of my favorites is Saint Oscar Romero. I think he struggled with OCPD, which is a little bit different than OCD. I'm not an expert, but it's obsessive compulsive personality disorder. And his story is really interesting because he struggled a lot with scrupulosity, which I think people who struggle with scrupulosity, sometimes, you know, if they have a spiritual director or if they're confiding in somebody, like a religious mentor, that can kind of be skated over and not looked into deeper, of like, there's probably a reason someone's inclined to scrupulosity. Not to say that, you know, you definitely have a diagnosed mental illness, but it's worth looking into. And so I really appreciate his story because he's also a man, and I think that is another kind of hard point where men don't talk about these issues as much as women. So I think looking at, you know, this prominent archbishop who severely struggled with these issues, and he's one of my favorites. Another awesome one is Servant of God, Dorothy Day. She also had attempted 2 suicides, or had 2 suicide attempts. So I have a special devotion to her because I just see our stories are not similar completely. She had a wicked story of just a lot of things. But yeah, I do resonate a lot with her and her journey. Trying to think, Saint Therese, Little Flower. I mean, she struggled with supposed anxiety and OCD. So there's a ton out there. If you go to the Human Condition Instagram, we kind of did a little series on some different saints, but I think the church sugarcoats, you know, some of these saints and their struggles, and we oftentimes overlook the ones who struggled with mental illness, you know. So I think it's important to hear their stories and amplify their stories, so that, you know, the body of Christ now can resonate with them and see themselves in their stories.
Right. Yeah, that's so beautiful. It's so necessary for, like I kind of talked about earlier, is understanding other people's stories and hearing the other side of things, because far too often do we I don't know, we glaze over like testimonies sometimes, you know, and there's also the other side where we like only listen to testimonies, and there's a healthy balance there of like hearing someone's story, being inspired and understanding and learning something from it, and not worshiping it, right? But there's a beautiful thing when it comes to, you know, sharing and listening to people's stories. And that's something that, like, you know, I love to do. I love, like, there was a time when I was in college, I would just like, all right, tell me your, I would ask like someone to like, hey, let's go get some coffee, and like, just tell me your conversion story. Like, you know, I just like want to hear it. I just want to see how God works. And I think that desire kind of like shows now with the podcast, like me wanting to interview and talk to
Totally.
people, and just kind of hear their story. And that's kind of why we lead each conversation, each podcast interview with fact,
Yeah.
with a faith background, because it's so beautiful to hear the different ways that God works in people's lives, and there's so much that can be learned from those stories, especially when it comes to like mental health, like people who struggle with that the idea of it being true. I feel just haven't seen it to happen to their loved ones, or understand it to a point of somebody being in somebody else's shoe, like the very simple fact. I had a thing to kind of follow up with that, but it's slipping my mind. Give me a second here. So with that, hopefully maybe you can, when you listen to somebody's story, hopefully there's something that you can learn, right? So what is something that you would maybe even give advice, to somebody, to those who might be, what would you be your main advice for somebody, one, who's struggling with mental health, and in their faith, just kind of giving them a word of encouragement here. But then on the other side, also encouraging those who might be struggling with accepting this as truth. So you can start with the former and then with the latter.
Yeah, so for those kind of, struggling with mental illness and in the faith, seek therapy. That's kind of my only place to start, because you can't do it by yourself, and you need the help of a professional who understands the mind and understands practical ways to help you manage, maybe it is a diagnosed illness, but practical ways to manage this. I mean, it's, I'm almost 6 years kind of removed from my suicide attempts and being in intensive therapy, and it's still a daily decision to, am I going to practice these skills to get through the day, and right. to really stay on top of these issues that I live with. So starting with therapy and having a therapist that, if you want to integrate your faith, to seek out a Catholic therapist, because there's just so much integration between the two, and especially when it's done well, the results can be really really powerful to just understand. Maybe the ways that your mental health is impacting your prayer, or it's impacting your relationship with God, or the way that you see yourself, or the way that you view God, ways that you're not letting him into you, and not letting him to see the dark, messy spots, that you're dealing with. So I highly recommend people, seek out a Catholic therapist, but also that might not be where you're at right now, and that's okay. I went to a secular therapist for many years. She was phenomenal, and really, really intelligent, really helped me understand my mind and just some behaviors of, that were linked to, these diseases, and really get a hold of them, and really gave me some practical tools and tips. So I think, take an assessment of where you're at and what is going to be best for you. And if you are kind of discovering the faith and wanting to dive deeper into there, look into these saints that struggled with mental illness, read their stories. They really, really captivated me, and gave me a lot of comfort that, I don't have to be perfect, like right. I'm broken this side of heaven, and how can I best embrace that brokenness to become a saint? And that doesn't mean minimizing my brokenness or minimizing my pain, but it means, recognizing it and embracing it. So I would suggest that. And then for the latter, for those who, are having a hard time accepting it, I don't know, because I'm sometimes like, how? Like, right, these are real illnesses, people. They're real struggles. Can they be spiritual? 100%. Does the enemy love to attack our weaknesses, especially when they're hidden, such as mental illness? 100%. I think the enemy definitely tries to attack, these struggles that I live with, and kind of create create a presence there. So there can be a spiritual component, but they're not solely spiritual all the time, you know, like just as any other physical ailment is, and the devil can really capitalize on those physical ailments and try to capitalize on any weakness we have, they're still real. And I think, for you as well, look into these saints in their lives, and really experience through their stories just the realness of these struggles that they lived with. If you can, there's some other Catholics who are pretty outspoken about their own struggles with mental illness. I think that helps people, helps it make it real for people of like, wow, this is someone's, daughter or son or friend or whoever that struggled with these things. And like they came from a good family, or they were living a Catholic life. Granted, when I was really struggling with depression and attempted suicide, I wasn't super faithful and wasn't living out the faith, but I came from a great family, and I came from a relatively faithful family. And then I know people, who were very devout and had strong prayer lives and were contemplating suicide. So, I mean, just because you are praying every day and going to Mass and living out the faith in a really devout way doesn't exempt you. And I think when people can really personalize these stories and put a face to them and read them and enter into them, it makes it a little real for them. Because I think, especially for me, I had an idea of, these types of people struggle with mental illness. They come from these backgrounds. They come from really messy lives. And, they probably did something where, they weren't setting themselves up for success. And, now this is a result of that. Or like, that's just not the case, like people can be predisposed genetically, to these issues, or, just from any past experience, past trauma. Like, so many things can play into this. So I just think, seeking out those stories to kind of personalize it for them, following accounts and kind of broadening their horizons, looking into different resources. I mean, definitely follow along with The Human Condition. Catholic Psych is another incredible resource. Oh, cool. They offer incredible therapy and actual professional counseling, but they Dr. Greg, who started Catholic Psych, just started a podcast, and they just have really awesome resources. I'm trying to think who else. There's a few other ones. If I remember them, I'll send them to be in the show notes. But stuff's out there, people. I think a lot of times we want to write off things as, that's not really real, or like that's not as serious as people make it out to be. Like, and it's usually because we're unfamiliar with it. Look into it. Anything that you are probably writing off is probably because you just don't have a ton of firsthand experience with it, which isn't your fault. Like, it's okay, but look into it. Do the work and do some research. So that's what I would encourage people to do.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that too. Just challenging your mindsets, right? Opening your heart a little bit to the idea that maybe that like if you really struggle with the fact, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is real, because
I had to do that. I mean, I thought mental illness was a hoax. I was like, this isn't real. And I mean, I really struggled when I was put on antidepressants for the first time. Like, I really struggled with that because all I could picture was those, and I do think these commercials are dramatic, but those commercials, not dramatic, but they're a little bit cheesy. Those antidepressant commercials of like a woman laying in bed and rain on the window and just these like really cheesy and kind of like melodramatic commercials of like, this is the type of person you have to be to go on a antidepressant, you have to have just suffered a divorce or a loss of a loved one or like all of these things. So I needed to humble myself and say, actually, you can come from a really good family with 2 loving parents and not have any issues seemingly from the outside and still need antidepressants because you're struggling with a disease. So I think there's a lot of humility that is there, whether it's wanting to start therapy for the first time or start medication, of kind of humbling yourself and saying, maybe I'm not right and maybe my ideas of this aren't completely right. And then there's the side of, maybe you don't think mental illness is real, or people are, attention seeking or being exaggerating, like maybe, you know, we need to ask for some humility and say, maybe I'm not right about this. Maybe this is a real issue, you know?
Right.
So I think there's humility needed on both ends of the
Yeah.
pendulum.
Yeah. It's all necessary for you to be able to ever change your mindset. If you're not open to it at all, you'll never change. Your mindset will never change. And if you really want to seek the betterment of, a better understanding, rather, you have to have some humility. You need to have an open heart, and you have to be vulnerable.
Yeah. And I think that's also true. I mean, yeah, it's just humility is just so needed throughout the whole process, because I had stopped going to therapy, you know, after I'd gone for a few years, stopped a little bit while I was in college because I was, you know, doing well. And then actually my fiance had encouraged me to start going back to therapy. And especially before we got engaged and, you know, we're preparing to enter into marriage and take that to the next level, he just said, I won't propose until you start going back to therapy. Because he saw a need of, like, you know, this is going to benefit both of us, you know? And that took a lot of humility, because in my mind, I was fine. You know, I'm like, I did that healing stuff. Like, we're doing good now. You know, nothing crazy's going on. Like, I don't know what else I need to work through. Like, I'm doing fine. And it's been so beneficial, especially like preparing to start my life with another person. And then the other thing I think is, in therapy, like we're learning a lot of skills and a lot of practices that we need humility to accept. Oh, hi. My little cousin's coming in to say hello. Can you wait a few minutes? I'll be down in a little bit, okay? I just remember learning a lot of tools that I thought, that's never going to work. Like, that's not going to help me overcome anxiety. Like, I'm not even going to give that a try, because that's dumb. And just like a lot of these things to, you know, to change our behaviors and to change the ways that our mind is telling us to react to certain things. Like, it just seemed really, I just didn't think it would work. You know, I really had a hard time in therapy at the beginning, and it did. It took a lot of humility to say, okay, I'm going to at least give this a try. Like, what do I have to lose? And they started to work, and, you know, you start to see the benefits. So there really is humility needed in the whole process.
Is there any value, or is it appropriate to share any of those tools, one of those tools that you learned?
I think
for those who are listening.
Totally. A lot of what was used in my therapy is a practice called CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So I'm a little rusty. I mean, there's a lot there, and I would like to kind of revisit it, because I just remember learning it, and once I kind of overcame the idea of, like, this is dumb, but once I started really getting into it, I mean, these were practices that every human needs, because it was really just a way to identify exactly what it sounds, cognitive behavioral therapy. So the way that our thoughts impact our behaviors, and really recognizing those thoughts, like, is that an intrusive thought? Is that a true thought? And so a lot of the work that we did was, you know, especially with depression and thoughts of suicide, you have a lot of thoughts of just lies, basically, of things that aren't true, that you've manifested it internally for so long that you start to believe to be true about yourself, and you live your life out of those. And I mean, once I had my conversion, I was like, CBT is so theological that I don't know why every person who's teaching the faith doesn't care about mental illness, because it's basically like us, we have these wounds, you know, these wounds from our lives create lies about ourselves, and we begin to believe these lies of, you know, I'm worthless, everybody hates me, I'm a failure, you know, you name it, all of these lies that we begin to believe in ourselves that are rooted in a wound caused, you know, whether it was in childhood or whenever. And because of that lie, we act and behave out of that wound, out of that place of hurt. So whether that's in relationship with someone, the way that I respond in certain situations when it's pressing on that wound, of maybe, you know, the way that, something between a child and a father that I'm now projecting onto me and my fiance or any other male in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, my mind was blown. I was like, this, you don't even need to have a mental illness to figure this out and to see that all of us are struggling with. Nobody has been taught, like, how do we process emotions to not manifest as wounds and to not live out of these wounds. So just a lot of the techniques and practices of, kind of addressing those lies, basically identifying that lie and renouncing it. I mean, we weren't doing it in a theological sense, but I mean, we were identifying those lies and saying, okay, where's the evidence that supports this lie, and where's the evidence that doesn't support the lie? We would kind of do these charts of, identifying these lies that we believed of, like, I am worthless, and writing down, like, why do we believe that is true? Has anything actually supported that? Or is that just kind of like a misconception of this wound that we are living out of, that in that moment I felt worthless. So now I perceive everything that I do is to be worthless. So it's really just a lot of, like, thought, trailing thoughts, seeing where they lead you to, like, what was the root wound? What was the root incident that caused that?
Yeah.
I mean, it was really amazing. It was really amazing. It opened up so much, because I think a lot of us, we have these personality traits or, I don't know, these things that we do, and it's just like, oh, I've always been that way. We kind of ignore it. But, like, we were made good. Like, of course we're broken and we do bad, we have bad character flaws, but, like, look into that. Like, what is that rooted in? Like, it could be rooted in the way that you were treated once, and now you act out of that way. So I think it's just really powerful to pay attention to kind of our behaviors and the way that we feel tempted to instantly react in certain situations, because a lot of times they're so deeply rooted in prior incidents. So that was a huge transformation in mindset for me, was learning cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah, that sounds so helpful. I mean, to be honest, I'm thinking about it, like, how that could just be so beneficial for anybody to do, really. I mean, even, like, those who might struggle with anger issues and stuff. Like, that's something that can just really benefit anyone, whether or not.
100%. Yeah, and I just remember wanting to shout it from the rooftops of, like, you don't need to have a mental illness to do this. Like, we're all broken. We're all living out of these wounds, and we're hurting each other. I don't know. Oh, it was my therapist who said this. She said, we don't heal solely just for ourselves, but we heal to love and serve others well. That it's not only a benefit to us, but it's a benefit to those we're in relationship with. Like, how often am I hurting people because I'm, blinded by these wounds and acting out of them? Yeah. But the work of healing is actually helping me to be a better gift of myself, and to love those around me well and serve them well. So I just think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, so true. That's amazing. I love this. Yeah, I wanna continue this conversation, but we should probably wrap this one up.
Yeah.
We definitely need to have you back on, and I always wanted to do.
Yeah, totally.
I was talking about last week's episode, doing a round table with my co-host and like a couple of different people, like part of the LGBTQ plus community who are Catholic, and just kind of having a round table discussion, but also doing something with that and mental health, or doing that and different topics. It's something that I want to do in the future. I want to see how we can implement this, because again, these are just, like, never ending topics and topics that we can continue to talk about and help spread awareness towards. And so I hope that we can have you back on in the future. So
yeah, totally would love that.
Yeah. So great. for those of you who again haven't heard about it or checked it out, go check out the Human Condition community on Instagram, and then check out their website. Again, all of this stuff is under show notes, and if you want to donate to their cause and help them in completing pursuing their mission, please check out the different ways you can donate and help spread the word, and pray for them. So thank you again, Kristen. This was amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm gonna go. I forgot. Well, yeah. So we're going. Yeah,
No
we're
worries.
we'll wrap it up here. But basically, if you want to go do that, check it out their website. Check out all their things. Make sure you follow them on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram at Living Ardently. You can follow me personally. It's only Adrian. Do you want to plug your personal account and have people follow you there
Yeah,
too?
I think it's just my name. I don't even know.
Yeah.
Kristen Deasy. And
Yeah.
yeah, again, the human condition is the human condition community.
Awesome. And then, if you're listening on Spotify or anywhere else, if you're listening on Apple, make sure you like and like the podcast, rate the podcast, review it, make sure you're subscribed, and follow anywhere else you're listening to. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. Helps us a lot with all these reviews you guys sent in. If you want to send us a message or call us or talk to us or contact us, you can go call us at 407-853-2010 or send us an email at livingardentlypod@gmail.com. And you can donate to the Living Ardently podcast as well if you want to do that. Everything you submit to us goes back to the podcast and creating new things, and we have some plans of making some pretty cool things in the future. We're just talking as a team this past weekend, and we love to share this ideas with you, but we do need some funding for it potentially. So we'll be bringing that up shortly in the next few months. Probably we'll see if it fleshes out, but things like that happen. Sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, again, make sure to check out the human condition community and anything of any of those resources that Kristen will send me. I'll put them in the show notes. Maybe some literature that you might want to read or videos you might want to watch. I'll put them all down there, and hopefully you find value in this episode and in the content that she shares below.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks again for coming here. Any last words you want for the people listening?
Just don't give up hope. Have grace with yourself. I think we need to extend grace the most kind of on ourselves in the midst of these sufferings, and therapy. Start a therapy. That's all I can say.
Awesome.
You won't regret it.
Yeah. So good. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed and found value in today's episode. And until next time, when we have I don't know what we're doing next time, actually. So
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned to find out next week. And hopefully in the future, we'll have Kristen back as part of the human condition community. All right, y'all. God bless. And until next time, keep living ardently. Peace.